everyone, and welcome here once again to AZ Sports Box Weekly on Zoom in our remote format. It is already week 2 of the quarantine period version of AZ Sports Box Weekly, and we already cannot wait for sports to resume. But we still have a jam-packed show. We have special guest play-by-play announcer. He's worked with every major network you can name: ESPN, NBC Sports, CBS Sports. You can name all of them, and he's probably worked for them. And that's going to be Wolfe. He's going to be joining us later in the show. But we got a lot of news topics to talk about and such a short time to get into it. So let's start with Major League Baseball. And Wills, we talked about this last week, and it looks like your prediction on the MLB coming to Arizona for the regular season might end up coming true, because that's what the league is exploring. All teams could be playing here in the Sunshine State, or the Valley of the Sun, I think is what they call it here. Sunshine State is more Florida. But obviously there is a little bit of a hurdle because it would be the heat. But let's get just straight into it. Wills, what do you think off of last week?
So, I mean, since we talked about it last week, it actually has gained some traction with the MLB because when we first mentioned it, it was just very preliminary talks about it. But the MLB is really – they're trying to get their season – they're trying to get it started because I think for the Diamondbacks, tonight would have been their 14th missed game so far of the season. So we're 2 full weeks into the season. The thing about Arizona, it's going to be tough because there would be 11 facilities here. So I did more research on it since last week. There would be 11 facilities here. There are 30 MLB teams. A lot of the concerns are Arizona's already, I think, it doesn't have a lot of COVID cases, but it's top 15 in the country, I believe. Bringing in over 1,000 players from every organization, you really don't want to turn Phoenix into a COVID hotspot. So that's one of the big issues. Second issue is teams play 182 games. Obviously, it'd be a shortened schedule, but assuming you could fit in a triple header at Chase Field, which is the only indoor facility that's available right now, the other 10 would be outdoors. So if you do a triple header, that's leaving 24 teams to play outdoors in 10 facilities. So there's going to be a lot of scheduling issues, and it's going to be a lot of work to be done by the MLB. And I'm really not sure what the process is of if the MLB could just decide, hey, we're picking up 1,000 people and moving them to Phoenix. I don't know if they're allowed to do that because citizens of Phoenix are not happy with it, of the news that have come out. So it's really they already announced, I think, yesterday that they're not even going to have a decision until May, that they're not even going to announce whether the leagues are suspended or going to pick back up until May. So we have a lot of guessing. We have a lot – people in sports love to theorize, to make theories about everything, and this is just, I think, one of them. I really think the MLB season is going to stay suspended, but it's really interesting that Phoenix could be one of these cities that gets – every MLB superstar from Mike Trout down to Max Scherzer, everyone.
Franklin, what's your input on this?
Yeah, no, just to add on that, I would also like to add that for like a safety purpose, also with the fact that a lot of people would probably have to, like, I think I said this a little bit last week, but like there's also the hotel factor in all this, where like there's going to be a lot of players moving into like hotels or even Airbnbs, just trying to like find a place to stay. And some teams might have like a bunch of players stay all at once with each other. I think I like the idea, but I think that it's still kind of a little skeptical because like Will says, a lot of people are coming from everywhere around the country into one city, and that could potentially kind of increase the likelihood, because we don't know. There could be players that have COVID that we might not even know about, and they might not even know about. So like, I'd say better safe than sorry. I'd say like maybe I think they're doing the right thing by postponing like the decision maybe till May to see if we get another like 30-day sit-in. But yeah, we'll see.
Another interesting fact you brought up about the hotels is, let's say they are to do a full season, a 4.5-month, 5-month season. If you do end up buying hotels for these MLB teams, there's going to be workers that are going to have to live in that hotel with them, because like the people that are making their food and the people are serving them, whatever, people are cleaning their rooms. If they leave that hotel, then they are picking up risk of, then again, giving it to players if they go home to their families. So there's a lot of logistics that you really need to figure out before this can really start picking up any severity of it actually happening in Phoenix.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think another obstacle is, like you said, Wills, there are 11 venues here. There obviously would have to be teams sharing stadiums, and that, of course, includes Chase Field, with all the teams are probably going to want to play in that stadium because it's the only ballpark that's enclosed here in the state, I think. Should the MLB start considering other states that are possibly not going to be too hot, like maybe Florida or maybe some cities that have enough college baseball stadiums?
So Florida and Phoenix were the only two places that were considered because they both have spring training. Florida is a no because I think it's second or third behind New York as most COVID cases. So that was automatically ruled out. The players were saying, no, we would not go to Florida. None of us want to play there. And when it comes to other places with college stadiums, I mean, you can move people. You can move teams. You can move 4 teams to Phoenix, 4 teams to here, another place that has 2 arenas. But I think the whole goal behind it is to keep every single player in the MLB in one area, because let's say you split up one division and one player gets COVID. They can't just shut down that one division because they're only playing each other at that point. So you can't really have a league if you spread the teams out across the country. So you're going to have to put them in one central location. It's not going to work unless you really do have that vaccine.
I agree with that too.
Oh. Well, I mean, obviously a lot to talk about. And like Will said, I mean, no decision's going to be made till May, and I'm sure they're doing that just to wait things out because
it's the earliest, I think, too. That's early.
There's no time telling. There's not really a specific timeline anyone's going off of because we still don't know how soon there's any signs of this virus going down.
Yeah, I think they're going based on because there was they're saying from the government everywhere that we have a 30-day sit-in, and I think after 30-day sit-in's over, then they're probably going to say, okay, where are we at with this whole situation? And then once they get that, then they'll go from there. So I think it's kind of little by little, step-by-step process right now.
Okay, well, let's move into our next topic. We got the Q&A with Ari Wolfe, and he's been a legendary play-by-play broadcaster. And now we're just going to wait for him to join in. All right. Well, it is now time for our new Q&A segment here on the AZ Sports Box Weekly. With the coronavirus going on, all sports being on pause, we decided it's time to invite some special guests here. And our first guest of the week is none other than the legendary play-by-play announcer, Ari Wolfe. He's worked on all Big Four major sports networks: NBC Sports, CBS, ESPN. Pretty much any sports network you've done play-by-play for.
Fake screen to one direction. Now it's McCoy. Blockers in front of him. McCoy into some space and into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
Holiday Hoops is upon us. Ari Wolfe alongside the coach Pete Gillen. And coach, we came in here wondering whether or not Tulane had enough offense to keep up with Georgia Tech. What do you think of the pace so far?
I love it. Up and down. You're going to have neck breaks to watch this game. It's great.
And he completes this one to Higgins. And this guy can fly. Somebody better get a hand on him. There he goes. Goodbye, Rashard Higgins. Touchdown, Rams.
And another steal. Great defense from the Nuggets. Lawson thought about pulling up. Now a jacket for 15 and connects. Ty Lawson's feeling it.
Numbers beefed up a little bit.
1st and 10.
Looking for growth. He's got it. Touchdown number 7 with Cedric Bonner.
Ari, it's so glad to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Caleb, how long do we go back now? When did I first meet you? You're just a little guy, I think, when I first met you.
With the Arena Football League back around, I think, I don't know.
Jacksonville, maybe?
Yeah, in Orlando. I remember, I think 2005, or the years that they were on NBC, they were also on OLN, which I believe, were you the first play-by-play announcer for OLN?
I was, 2006. That was our first year. We did 12 games, and it was really fun because, I got to be involved in choosing the analysts. I had 3 different analysts for 4 games each, and it was one of the first national packages I worked on, so it was pretty cool.
And for those of you guys who don't know, OLN, which stand for Outdoor Life Network, is they televise outdoor sports, and then they got the NHL and arena football, and they turned into Versus, and now they're known as NBC Sports Network. So technically, you were the first football play-by-play announcer for NBCSN, if I'm correct.
I'm not sure of that, but I like it. That sounds very good. Let's just go with that for the moment, because clearly they've got some pretty good play-by-play guys at NBC. But for you guys that are studying and want to make a career out of it, being away from it right now really reminds me of how much I love my career. The interactions on a daily basis with coaches, players, administrators, SIDs, the travel, the excitement, the buildup, and really the relationships. I mean, I just miss the day in and day out of being a play-by-play announcer. And I'm fortunate that, like you guys, I went to school for it. And I went for grad school, not for undergrad. So I went to the Annenberg School at USC. And one of the reasons I chose that program is they guaranteed me priority on the campus radio station. So I got to call USC football, basketball, and baseball for 2 years, which was a super valuable experience. I think, as you guys know, getting to work on your craft before, let's say, you're getting a paycheck for it, you have a little room for error. And more importantly, you can develop your own style, your own presentation, because everybody's different in how you do it. You want to be comfortable with yourself, right? See, I'm someone, and Caleb can attest to this, I like to focus on the positive. You won't really hear me call out a player or a coach, but that took some time to develop, because I remember in student radio, at first you'd get a little more student reaction if you said stuff that was a little more edgy. And so at first I kind of got a little teased by that. I thought, okay, maybe that's the way for me. But ultimately I decided that when you have to see and interact with the players and coaches, you remember that they're real people and that they're not just, names on the back of a uniform, and that you want to treat them all with respect. So when I got out of USC, I started at the very, very bottom. I did independent baseball in Lynn, Massachusetts. The team was called the Massachusetts Mad Dogs. In fact, they didn't actually pay me to do the games. I worked in their front office by day selling like group ticket packages and some corporate stuff. Frankly, guys, I didn't sell very much. I was just in it. So, but, we did like an 86 game shortened season. We traveled by bus everywhere we went. We went, all over the northeastern part of America. And it was a great experience because at the beginning, guys, you'll realize this in 10, 20, 30 years, you don't have as much material when you're young. You don't have as many stories to tell of all these cool games you've been at, the interactions. So how I filled the time for 3+ hours a night, those 86 games, like looking back, I just can't believe that I could fill the time. I'm not sure what I was talking about. But I got very lucky because shortly thereafter, when I was in Massachusetts, I would bring my cassette tapes, which I realized date me, to every single city, and I gave it to the GM. And so the GM in Albany, the second time we came through, he actually brought out an assistant basketball coach from a very small Division II school, the College of St. Rose. And he liked my tape. So I met him during the 7th inning stretch while we were back in town the second time. And Albany ended up being a huge, huge stepping stone in my career, because I went there and I did independent baseball, Division II college hoops, and that's where I got introduced to arena football. And that all started in 1997. My first year with the Albany Firebirds in Arena League was 1998. And I had a 20-year run in the Arena Football League. And, Caleb was around that sport a lot. There's a level of intimacy that you often don't get, now that I work for the NFL. It's not as intimate. The teams are bigger. The staffs are bigger. So in the AFL, it kind of became like a family, kind of like a brotherhood, and we all supported it. And it was so valuable for me to have all of those interactions. And I'd encourage all of you guys that whatever games you cover, get to know everybody. Get to know the equipment guy. Get to know the assistant trainer. Get to know all those guys. They'll give you little pieces that will give you a more comprehensive look at the organization. You don't know when that little nugget from the assistant trainer. So, a guy goes down and it looks like he's got a little ankle or something. Well, the assistant trainer, because he's cool with you, has actually told you that, he's had some ankle issues. And then, boom, you're there to fill in that little nugget. So there are so many little moments when you travel with a team, whether it's by bus, by plane, by train, whatever it is. Just make sure to try to touch every person in the organization. I think it's one of the most valuable things you can do as a young broadcaster is don't try to stay away from them and try to be neutral. engage as many people as you can. And also down the line, you're going to run into these people again. You never know what guy who's the equipment manager might be the GM of a baseball team 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I think building relationships has been one of the cornerstones for me in order to have a 20-year plus career.
Yeah. When you got into working for the Albany Firebirds in '98, which was the year that the Predators won the first championship, ironically. When you were first introduced to arena football, were you very skeptical of thinking like, hey, this is going to take my career far, or did you think it was a pretty exciting sport?
Okay, well, let's backtrack. So in the summer of 1996, I had finished 1 year at USC. It was a 2-year program. And they actually had a sportscaster sort of camp, if you will, in Orange County. I went to it, and I was the oldest person there by like 10 years. So I was like 25, and most of the kids were like 14, 15. Well, they had us go and I got to call a California Angels game against the Seattle Mariners. I'll never forget, because Alex Rodriguez was a young player at that time. We got to do NBA Summer League. Well, the third thing we got to do was call an Anaheim Piranhas arena football game. So, Caleb, if you can believe, here I am living in Albany, and I'm doing this College of St. Rose basketball, and our equipment manager was the equipment manager for the Albany Firebirds as well. So he said that they had an opening, and I said, you won't believe this. I actually have a cassette tape of me calling an arena game from the sportscasters camp that I sent myself to. So I actually already understood the game and had learned the rules. So it was actually just super fortunate, the timing of everything. So I ended up getting that job, and the Firebirds had a great run. The very next year, they won the title, and it was a magical experience. I mean, all those guys are still really good friends today. I mean, it was voted the greatest team in Arena Football League history, the '99 Albany Firebirds. And getting to call every game on radio and traveling with the team, here I am. I'm 49 years old. I would say that was arguably the highlight of my career. I've done bigger things with bigger paychecks, but in terms of my emotional investment in the outcome, there was nothing more fun than when the team won it all in '99. So I definitely didn't think it was gimmicky. I didn't know if it would lead to much. But, I think that it taught me a lot about appreciating that it's not just the all-stars that count. It's the guys who maybe never got the chance to even play at the highest level. Because I ended up doing a lot of NFL Europe, which isn't around anymore. I've done a lot of what we'll call, just below NFL caliber. And I got to know those guys and appreciate their stories. I think it's helped me as a broadcaster, as someone who's empathetic to the struggles of being a pro athlete. And I think that nothing matters to me more than when I see those guys, they know that I respect what they've been through. And I don't think that being a professional athlete is as great as most fans think it is, because I see those guys in the training room on Wednesday night, and they're beat up, and their bodies are killing them, and they don't have the strength to carry their little kids around. So getting to sort of see the nitty gritty, the part that's hard, I think has made me a more empathetic broadcaster.
Oh, man. Absolutely.
I got a question for you. So a lot of our teachers, a lot of the Cronkite teachers are people that are currently in the journalism field. A lot of them aren't sports people, but they have told us, your first 2 years out of college and in the real world of journalism is kind of when you figure out whether you love it or not, because you're not making any money and you're in a small town. Can you tell us kind of that experience of if you ever did face that point and what made you realize that this is for you and kept you going in the field?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I was still in Albany 5 years out of grad school. And I think that I learned many years later that my mom and sister were thinking of having an intervention with me. They were wanting to be like, look, like, we don't know if you may love this, but, can you really make a living? Will you be able to support a family? Will you be able to make all those things happen? And I never had a single moment of doubt. If I was still in Albany today, I wouldn't have traded that to work for a bank or to do something else. The only other thing in my life I've ever wanted to do, and broadcasting has kind of helped it, is I love working with kids. So whether it's, helping out friends who, work with their kids' teams, or working with young people like yourselves, that was the only thing I ever wanted to do. So if anything, I would have kept broadcasting on whatever level I made it to, and maybe supplemented it with some kind of teaching job. And I do, at some point when work starts to maybe slow down for me, I would consider going into teaching broadcasting, because I think that, having been through it all, and, some people go right off the field into a high-level job, especially the former players. I've really seen every level of sport, from the very lowest to the very highest, and I think it gives you an appreciation of all of it. But I never had a moment where I thought, I'm gonna have to give this up and do something else. There's just nothing else I'm passionate about. My mom always stressed to me, she said, you'll always be great at something in life if you love doing it. And the rewards will be something, maybe it'll be money, maybe it'll be the respect of your peers, maybe it'll be the respect of your colleagues. But she's like, if you love it, you'll want to be great for yourself and not for your boss or for anybody else. And I think that, if they told me tomorrow I could never call another game, my heart would be broken for the rest of my life. There's something so fun about being the eyes and ears at any kind of sport. And look, at this point, I'm jonesing for any sport to play. But one thing I'd strongly recommend to you guys is, with whatever sports you think are your favorites, be willing to try anything. And that's where like arena football came in. Whatever it was, I treated it the same. And I think that that's a great way to approach it. People are like, oh, did you study extra hard because you had USC against Cal? And I have the same stock answer. Treat them all the same. Every game's the same. Because for those people watching, for their friends, for their family, that's the most important game there is. That game you're calling at that moment. So I think it's really important to try everything. I've been a sideline reporter for countless sports. I've probably done at least a dozen Olympic sports in the lead up to me getting my first Olympics back in 2012, the London Games. So I did slalom canoe racing. I did triathlons. Do everything that gets presented to you, and then you'll figure out whether you're good at it or not. But I would say don't be scared to try anything. Any opportunity like what you're doing right now, I didn't have this option. This is great. Just talk to as many people as you can and just expand your horizons, because you never know what direction your career is going to take. And I'm so grateful that I did all those Olympic sports, because they're a part of my career. I work for the Pac-12. I've done gymnastics. I've done rowing. I have a long-term deal at the Tennis Channel. I love doing tennis. So I would just be open-minded to trying anything, guys, because you also don't know where it might lead.
Absolutely, 100%. It's like the famous Wayne Gretzky quote: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So
right on.
Absolutely. Franklin, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. So I'm a transfer junior myself at ASU. I transferred from a community college called Ohlone and from the Bay Area. And so I'm fairly new to the whole journalism field. I really have a passion for sports. My main sport I would say that I love is probably football. So as like a guy that's like really new to the whole sports journalism field, I wanted to ask you the question of like, what would your advice be for like young journalists like us trying to make it in the sports journalism field? Like where would be the right place to get your foot in the ground?
The most important thing is to get reps, guys, because you got to develop your approach to calling a game. So you guys could take games that have already been played, put them on your screen with no volume, get any kind of recording device, and just call the game. It's as simple as that. Just getting reps. I got gigs because there was stuff on my demo reel that I did that never actually aired, but it was just me practicing. And I never made it like I really did those games, but it's just showing that you can do it. So I would say if you want to call games in whatever sports they are, turn the volume off the TV, build yourself a board that has all the information. You could go back to whatever that game is. Let's say it's an NFL game between the Cardinals and the Falcons. You could go back and see the active rosters on that day, and you could essentially build your own football board to prepare and call it like it's a real game. Now, some things are going to be hard to match what you see on TV because you don't know what's coming from the truck. Don't worry about that part of it. Just do the best you can, but it's reps, and more reps. I would say if you love doing it, every week you should try calling a couple games at home. And you don't have to do all 4 quarters, but keep working at it. So then if, let's say, you get to the end of your career at ASU and someone's interested in you, well, do you have a tape? Do you have a reel? Do you have something I can look at? Well, it doesn't matter that the game didn't air, Franklin. Just go ahead and show them, hey, I called this Cardinals-Falcons game, and have them take a listen. And you never know. And one thing I'll warn you guys about is you'll send your stuff out, and one guy might love it, and the exact same reel you send to somebody else, and they will absolutely hate it. So you do kind of have to develop some thick skin and not take it personally. And that's hard because you're the problem. But I warn you, there are times where people can be really cold and just be like, I had a bunch of people tell me I had no future in it and that I should drop it immediately. Like I had zero chance to have a career in it. I remember meeting with an agent in New York who's like, you're wasting your time. You got no shot. Now I could have taken that and been like, okay, well, I guess I got no shot. But instead it actually motivated me, not necessarily to show him, but I just wanted to not let the negative people bring me down, because if you're passionate about it, frankly, just go for it. Right? I mean, even if you have to do other gigs to support yourself, you can still constantly work on your demo reel and add sports, add different things. I mean, at one point I was a reporter for the NFL Network. I thought it was the easiest job ever because I only had to go live for 45 seconds. I was like, I'm used to going live for 3 hours. What's 45 seconds? Send me to wherever you want. I'll tell you what happened in practice at the press conference. So it was a breeze. So doing as many things as you can that are live, where you have to react to it in real time, whether you're sitting at home or, once sports resume at ASU, call as many games as you can. Try sports you don't know anything about, and you'll learn something from each one of those opportunities. So I just say, just get reps. That would be the main message. Get reps any way you can. And also, it's my number one piece of advice to everyone in our business, and it's the simplest thing. It's be easy to remember. Be nice, right? Just be nice. Like if you got to be there and something technical isn't working and you start having a fit, well, that's not going to do you any good. It's just try to remember everybody's got a job there. Treat everybody with respect. We had an expression we used to use in the Arena Football League. You treat the EM the same as the GM, and that's the equipment manager and the general manager. And if you do that, I think people more often than not will try to help you if there's something going wrong in your broadcast. But, it can be intense when you're on live and something goes on the screen that's wrong or you get something wrong. Just remember to be nice, because it feels like a huge moment in those few seconds. But I promise you, it's not that big a deal. As we all know right now, we're dealing with like a world crisis that's a lot more important than any game could ever be. So be nice and just don't be scared to fail. Like he said about Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan said virtually the same thing. You just got to be willing to put your stuff out there and see if it sticks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. But moving on, you mentioned on like being nice. I don't know if you noticed, but the team manager for the LA Avengers, Todd Murkow, was one of my professors last semester.
Oh, wow. Right on. How is Todd doing? I haven't heard his name in a minute.
Todd is doing great. I still keep in touch with him.
Please tell him I said hello, because he'll remember me, because we had, games obviously out in LA. And when I was doing OLN, he was, running the Avengers. So we came out for a couple games in LA.
Oh, yeah. I remember he tried to find the archive footage in the 2003 game when the Avengers beat the Preds off the net touchdown.
Right on.
Gives me a lot of heat about that. But when it came to all I guess this can go for football or any sports, when going into the preparation of the play-by-play, like how many notes did you write down? How many hours did you spend focusing on one game?
Okay, well, it ranges from the amount of participants, right, guys? So a college football game with two teams you've never seen or covered, that's the most work you can have, right? Because at least the home team's going to dress like 80 guys. Now, one thing that's important, early in my career, I would have enough nuggets on even like the third string left tackle. Well, you do kind of learn the longer you do it that you don't need 3 nuggets on the third string left tackle. What you need is enough information that if a player makes a play, that you have something interesting to say about them. So, I could grab one of my boards and show you, but depending on what position you play in football, you have more space on the board. The position that has the most space is quarterback, because I know I'm going to talk about the quarterback all day. And then there's lots of space for the running backs and for the receivers. The linemen, it's like a small section. You've got obviously their height, weight. You get information from the coaches. But most of the time you talk about a lineman, it's whether they had a penalty. Oh, look, this is the kind of great wife. When you have a great wife who just hands you the board. So, for instance here, so this is like a college football board. I don't know how well you can see it. But this main column right here, see, that's for Jordan Love, the quarterback from Utah State, who's going to be in the draft. I'd had him several times. You wouldn't have as much. And like down here, these are the linemen, where you just see a couple of little notes with them. But I created a system where I have labels for every single player. So if I have them again, all I have to do is update their year. All right, you got them as a freshman. Well, their height and weight, I guess hypothetically could change. But it doesn't really matter what the sport is. So like basketball, this is one where you just have like 12 guys. And you build these labels so that you can then put all their updated stats in it. But let's say you guys were doing every ASU game, right? Well, you don't need to reprint out. You don't need to type these labels out every game. You do it once, print out however many games you're going to do, and then you actually fill in. And the stat columns are games started, points, field goals, 3-point field goal percentage, free throws, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, and minutes. And then you just fill those in. I'm telling you guys, by just writing those in, you get a real impression of what that guy's contribution is to the team. And then I'll often write down, like let's say in this guy's case, Ryan Swan for Air Force. He led the team in points, field goals made, offensive rebounds, second in steals, and third in assists. So like having those kind of nuggets, you learn it when you write it, first of all. My mom always taught me it's kind of corny, through your brain, down through your arm, into your hand, and on the paper. So however you learn best, guys, because often I won't even have to look at the board for whatever that nugget is because I already wrote it out, so you kind of remember it. But in terms of preparation, college football takes the most time. I would say when I started, college football would take me between 20 to 25 hours to prepare for, because you probably want to watch at least one or two of their games, because the most jarring thing for any announcer is week one of college football, because there's no tape on a lot of the guys. They're out there running around. You've never seen what their body looks like, because there's duplicate numbers. I got to warn you, they're the biggest nightmare in sports. So you got a number 2 who's a defensive back, and you got a number 2 on the same team, and he's a running back. And frankly, they're like the same size guy. So you have to be really careful in terms of player ID, which brings me to one of my most important lessons, gentlemen. Remember this one. Better to be slow than dumb. What I mean by that is if you're working alone or with a spotter, you don't have to be in a hurry to ID the player. If you're not sure who that player is, wait. Even if you have to wait till the replay, you don't want to be wrong. So just wait. I made that critical error, the one thing I'm harping on, during my first Chiefs preseason game last year, where it was the final play of the first half, and there was a Hail Mary thrown against the Chiefs, where sometimes an offensive player would come in to defend it. So the ball ends up being picked off, and they had 2 34s on the team. And my spotter pointed at the offensive guy's 34, and I thought, well, maybe he could have been in the game. But I wasn't sure, and it turned out it was the other guy. So and that's the one thing I remember from the whole 3 hours of the game, is that we mis-ID'd one player. That's the thing I left there with. Got it wrong. Like, I got to do better. So better to be slow than dumb, and to always take your time. Even if you're on radio, you're in no hurry. Even if you're on TV, they're seeing the same stuff you guys are. And remember, people at home are watching on a 50-inch HD screen. You are all theory, in all likelihood, are watching on like a 10-inch screen that's not in high definition. So give yourselves a break, take a pause, and wait till you're absolutely sure on player ID. Because it's something that if you repeatedly make those kind of mistakes, that won't bode well. So it's, like I said, better to be slow than dumb. And in terms of prep, tennis is the easiest for me because I played it all through high school. There's only 2 people playing. So, I just keep the top 100 players in my computer. And then every time I have a match with one of those players, I just update their current wins and losses, where their ranking is. But all the general nuggets and bullet points stay the same. So I'd say for whatever sport you're doing, guys, learn to keep files for them so you don't have to go back and redo the work a second or a third time because you've already done it. So you want to learn to streamline it. So if with college football, it took me 25 hours before, now it takes me 6. But one thing I will really tell you is it's important to watch a team play if you get the chance, because you'll be so much more comfortable when that ball kicks off. Because as it is, there's a lot going on. In your mind, you can get a little, like, I look at my spotter's eyes on the first play, and they're usually like huge saucers, like, oh my gosh, this guy's running all over the place. Just take a breath, take your time, because you don't need to be in a hurry. And I'll also tell you that you don't need to prove to everybody in the first 5 minutes of the game how much you know, right? You got 3 hours. Let the game breathe a little bit. People love to hear the natural sounds of a game, right? Whether it's, the sounds on the field with the quarterback, calling out his checks, the center calling out his checks. That natural sound is great, and it's a great time filler for you to just back off and let the game speak for itself.
So, like, for example, like when you're watching a football game and you hear like the quarterback yelling cadences, that's like a great way to like just let the
game speak for itself. People love that. And this is my number one example. And I get a lot of young analysts, guys who just finished their careers, And one thing I try to remind them, when there's a big play in the game, shut up and get out of the way, right? If there's a home touchdown for Arizona State and the crowd's going nuts and the dance team jumping up and down, and then you get the player reaction from all the players on the bench, all you need to say is touchdown Sun Devils and lay out, right? And then once everything's calmed down and they kick the extra point, then you can really go into the details of the information of the play, that it was a 67-yard touchdown pass and it was his second touchdown pass of the game. Don't say any of those nuggets when the place is going crazy. Just let the game speak for itself.
So, all right, with everything going on, obviously no sports, I do want to pick your brain about some sports a little bit.
Okay.
Are you still a fan? Do you still follow USC football at all?
I still follow USC football, though, because I went to grad school. It's a little different connection than I think if you were an undergrad. And I was raised most of my childhood in Madison, Wisconsin, so I'm way more of a Wisconsin Badger fan. So in terms of football and basketball and following, I really have stayed a fan. And I'm originally from Philadelphia, and all the pro teams from Philly are all still my favorites. And I have lots of family that's still in Philly. In fact, when they won the Super Bowl, my wife and I flew to Philly to watch the game with our family. Like, I'm a diehard Eagles fan. It's actually kind of cool working at the NFL Network. They actually encourage us to, like, let it be known who we root for. Like, we don't have to be completely neutral all the time.
That's cool.
Like, if I'm writing a story about the Eagles, you can tell that I'm a little happier and more juiced than if it's somebody else. But for the most part, it is important to come across as a neutral party, right? Because fans are always listening to hear if it sounds like my mom, for instance. If you watch a Wisconsin game with her, there's a conspiracy against the Badgers in every game. Like, the officials are in on it, the fans are in on it. So you got to stay neutral. But I think in order to love your career, you still have to love the sports. You got to love the competition. I love that no 2 days are the same, right? Every game is different. Every sports competition has a different outcome. You can't predict it. So I just think that, just remember why you love it, because there'll be times where it'll be stressful. It's not that easy to make a living. I mean, if you looked at my Social Security statements for 6 years of my career, you'd be like, you might want to try something else. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, things really worked out for me. But you got to believe so much in yourself, because I moved to Los Angeles without a job, because I knew if I didn't come here, no one was going to hire me and move me here. So at the age of 38, I literally picked up my life, took my dog, my computer, my clothes, and my car, and just moved to LA, because I was like, there's so much sports happening here. Now, when I came out here, I was a little anxious. I was like, everybody doesn't get to work in the number 2 market. Everybody doesn't get to work in LA. Fortunately, it's worked out. 10 years at the NFL Network. Now I'm into my 3rd year at Tennis Channel. There's just a lot of sports that come from here. So wherever you guys want to live your life, where you want to wake up every day, I recommend, as soon as you have enough experience to be considered in that market, go there. Because if you're waiting, let's say, you want to move back to Orlando. Let's just use that as a theory. That, you may be doing great work in Phoenix, but, a lot of people in Orlando may never see it. And if you really have your heart set on building your career in that place, don't be scared to try to, even before you would necessarily move there, fly yourself out there, set up some meetings, get to know some people, because there's nothing better than being where you want to be, right? And I love Los Angeles. When I was in grad school here, I fell in love with it. And I still have a list of my 5 goals from when I left journalism school. And the number one was I want to live and work in Manhattan Beach and cover major professional sports. And I'm proud to say that's what I did. That's what I'm doing. But I think that having a set of goals that you can look back to and be like, okay, I'm on to that, or I'm making progress in those areas. I'd say whenever you guys are done at ASU, make a top 5 or top 10 things that you want to do. It's also fun to kind of go back and look at it and see that, you're actually accomplishing your dreams and your goals.
And of all the networks you've worked for, because you pretty much worked for the Big Four, but there's also a lot of sports networks that you've worked for that don't really broadcast sports anymore. I remember when the Arena Football League, they had a TV deal with TNN,
right,
which became Spike TV and is now known as Paramount Network. They don't broadcast sports anymore. Has there been a favorite network you've gotten to work with? Like, I know, like OLN, you said they gave you a lot of creative control.
Yeah, there I had a lot of control also because none of them knew anything about Arena Football, and I did. So I was essentially the executive producer and the play-by-play announcer. But
oh my gosh,
the most fun I've ever had, where I felt I got the most support, was the Mountain West Conference was actually the first conference to have their own network. But because they weren't a Power 5 conference, a lot of people don't know, it was called the Mountain Network. And so I was with the same college football team, same director, producer, and analyst and sideline reporter 3 straight years. And the kind of camaraderie you can build up when you work with the same people all the time is off the charts. Because a lot of times in this business, you'll have like a one-off where you literally call one game with a guy and you don't even really get a chance to get to know him. And I think that then you miss some of those little touches that I think can take a good broadcast and make it great. So the time at the Mountain Network, those 3 years from 2009 to 2012 were some of the best years. And then unfortunately that it just went out of business. So then we all didn't have it anymore. But I will tell you, having worked for everybody, when NBC was still owned by NBC before Comcast bought it, my first Olympics in 2012, so a bunch of us were in New York who were working remotely. I was doing table tennis from New York. And then they had all the talent that was actually in London. And they had us all together. So we're in a huge conference room in New York. And they're in a huge conference room in London. And they actually took the time to go through every single on-air person, from Al Michaels to Bob Costas to me. And they went on. And they basically said, if you've made it this far, you're great. Because we vetted you. Like nobody makes, they call it the NBC Mafia. You don't make the Olympics unless you have been thoroughly inspected in every way, shape, or form that you are going to bring something to their Olympic team. And I remember I was sitting next to another rookie because they go around and they'll be like, so how many of you are working on your 6th Olympics? Bunch of hands go up. On your 5th. There were only 8 rookies my year. And think about all the different sports. So me and another rookie, this guy, Jason Knapp, left together. And they made you feel so good that we both turned, and I'm like, there's nothing they could ask me that I wouldn't do. Because they make you feel like you're such an important part to what you're doing. Here I am, just a rookie on table tennis, and I felt I got the same amount of recognition as Bob Costas did during this thing. And I thought, what a great way to make people really want to do their very best for you. So while I've worked and I've had great experiences everywhere, my first NBC Olympics, no one's ever made me feel better about my career, that I had sort of made it. And they said something that I love. They said, from now on in your career, no matter what you do, within the first 3 things when you're mentioned, one of them will be NBC Olympic sports announcer. And I was like, you're right. There's nothing you're going to do where that's not in the top 3. Well, at least, because I know the Olympics are different now for you younger guys than they were for me, but the Olympics was like a huge deal for most of my life. I realize now that we have so many networks and so much sports are covered, it maybe doesn't have the same cachet it once did. It's still one of the things I'm most proud of, to be a part of the NBC Olympic team.
Yeah, because I think they just added 8 new sports for Tokyo, which is going to be postponed.
Right. In fact, one that I started working on. So the week where sports died, I call it, was March 11th, was when the NBA said we're done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I was supposed to leave on March 12th to go to Salt Lake City to climb a USA climbing event. Now, do you guys know what USA climbing looks like? Because before I got the gig, I did not. So do you think it's an outdoor or an indoor sport?
Outdoor.
See, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consensus here. No. I pictured myself at the basin of a small mountain watching these guys climb outside. Turns out that it's rock climbing. Like they've got it like a Lifetime Fitness wherever you are. So it's a good thing I watched some before they talked to me about doing it, or I would have looked the fool. But yeah, I was supposed to leave and I was going to call USA Climbing on that Friday and Saturday. But that Wednesday, when the sports world kind of said, we got to stop, I got an email at work. I was at NFL Network saying, no need for you to come to Salt Lake City. But that's one of the new sports. Climbing is now in the Olympics.
Yeah, and cheerleading, skateboarding are also now sports, which is crazy.
It's another great example. What I'm saying is don't be scared to try anything, because you never know that you might find a niche. I mean, my niche for the majority of my career was arena football, which to a lot of people was like a throwaway sport. But it changed my life in so many more ways than my career. I mean, the relationships, the fun. I mean, Caleb, you saw it firsthand. There's a certain level of camaraderie that we had that's different. I love working in the NFL, but it's just different. When the game's over in the NFL, you all get on a charter and leave. When in the Arena Football League, you stay over on the Saturday night and whatever town you're in, and you all go out. So it's just just nothing is a throwaway. Treat everything the same, and just remember to have fun with it, because most people's outlet is sports, right? I mean, that's what they watch for fun or relax. So you should sound like you're having the best time ever, because there's not There aren't many people who wouldn't rather be doing what you're doing for a living than what they're doing for a living. But with that, everybody's perfect on their couch, right? They're always very critical of the announcers. Just know that there's a certain level of envy that comes with it, which goes back to the being nice part. I hope this is still PC to say, I said being a play-by-play announcer is a little bit like being a beautiful woman. A beautiful woman walks in the room, and some women don't like her right away because there's a little bit of envy. The same thing happens when you're the play-by-play guy. There are some people who are like, what does he know? Or how come he gets to do that? So you just kind of got to kill him with kindness. And then you'll see that the guard comes down, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this guy's all right. Like, I'm glad he's doing the game. But just know at first, sometimes I feel like people are a little standoffish, like, who does this guy think he is? But just know that that's just a little bit of envy, because getting to call games, I think, is the coolest job in the world.
And, speaking of the Arena Football League, you describing the environment, it was such a great time, especially at the Preds and the old Amway Arena.
Right.
It was a great time. And also the Albany Firebirds, the years, especially that 99 team you mentioned earlier, had Eddie Brown, whose son is Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown, right, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the crazy thing, guys, is that most of the guys on the Firebirds, until Antonio was in the league for 4 years, didn't even realize it was Eddie's kid, right? Because, Eddie had a bunch of kids, first of all, total of 8. And Antonio used to just be, running around, at practice. He was just another little kid. I mean, you might have thought that's a quick little kid, but you frankly didn't give it another thought. So one of the great players in the Arena Football League is one of my best friends, a guy named Greg Hopkins. And he's from the Pittsburgh area. And it wasn't until Antonio was in his 4th year that I told Greg, who is a lifelong Steelers fan, I'm like, you realize that's Eddie's kid? He's like, no way. That can't be. That's little Antonio? But he's like, I used to babysit Antonio because, all the players lived in the same housing. So if one player had something to do, some other guy would step in to watch his kids. But, the Arena Football League, to me, nothing will ever replace it. I could work in the NFL for the rest of my career, and it wouldn't have quite that. You're just such a bigger part of it than you are in the NFL. It's just because the NFL is just so big. And don't get me wrong, calling the Chiefs preseason games, it's awesome. But it's also an organization with 90 players and a staff of another 60 guys, and I'm only with them for the 4 weeks of the preseason. So you don't really get to connect like an arena team where there's only 20 guys on the team and much smaller staffs, and you all travel together. So I wish I could go back in time and be you guys, because whatever the story is of your career, it's going to be a great ride, because if you love doing what you're doing, it's a blast.
When the league shut down, what was it, last year? What were your –
It shut down multiple times, Caleb. It also shut down for a minute in 2000, right before the season started, and then again in 2009. Yeah. We didn't play at all in 2009. The Philadelphia Soul was the team I did the TV and radio for. They won in 2008, and then there was no season in 2009.
I remember that.
You can't imagine the heartbreak to go from being champions, we're on top of the world, to there's no league anymore.
The SaberCats went on that same route as well. Was the Arena Bowl 28, and they ended up folding operations. But
they won. I mean, there'll be things outside of your control, guys, along the way. Especially, leagues will come and go. Franchises, unfortunately, in the less stable leagues, don't always stick around. So there is a lot of uncertainty, and you have to be prepared for that, because some of your buddies might become accountants or lawyers, and they're kind of set as long as they do their due diligence, do their work, show up on time. For us, there's all these other factors in play that you can't necessarily predict.
Do you think the AFL could possibly return, or is this?
I was about to ask that question.
Yeah.
Oh, I think 100%. Well, it's still being played in a similar form. They have the indoor football league. It's not the exact same rules. And it's not the same, but there is no doubt in my mind that the Arena Football League someone will want to invest and do it again, because with a centralized business model where everyone's paid from the same place, and you can do it right, where you can keep the expenses in check. This last time the Arena Football League went away is because they were being hit up with a couple of pretty big lawsuits, and by filing for bankruptcy, they essentially got out of it. So there's zero doubt in my mind that it will return at some point. In what form it looks like, I don't know. But I'd work for less and travel further than I'd like if that league restarted, because, it's a part of who I am. I did it for 20 seasons.
Yeah.
But I had friends, there's no higher compliment than people said I was the Al Michaels of the Arena League. And I'm like, that's as much as you can ask for.
Well,
That's a great. That's a great.
Yeah, I'm like, you compare me to Al Michaels on anything, I'm good with it. But
Yeah.
Al Michaels, the Arena League, it worked for me.
yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that because I know the AFL's had a bunch of TV partners, and usually it'd be in like a 2 or 3 year gap. And there's been a lot of great guys. I think Eli Gold was there for a while in the early.
Yeah, he was great. You know, he's still the Alabama announcer. He's got an awesome set of pipes.
Yes, and Charles Davis, I believe, was also as a color commentator.
Yeah, Charles Davis. Back to your TNN that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So it's 1998. It's week 1. Oh no, check that. No, we just won it. So it's right before the 2000 season, and the Nashville Cats were practicing just off Highway 65 on like a field that they had mowed. I mean, and that's where I met Charles Davis, who I had known from his work in Florida on the Sunshine Network. And I went over and introduced myself, and to this day, we're very good friends. And when I got the OLN gig in 2006, the first guy I recommended to them to do the games was Charles Davis. And so Charles and I got to call games together. But another great example of what I'm kind of trying to show you guys in the big picture, like create relationships, go up and introduce yourself to somebody at a practice who, you know, just try to make connections. I also think given we were able to communicate via email and text that you can kind of keep people informed with what's going on in your career, right? So Will, Franklin, or Caleb, you know, you get a gig. Well, you shoot a text to a couple of your professors, shoot a text to or shoot an email to some other people to just kind of, it lets them feel like they're a part of the development of your career. And then you never know where those relationships will take you. I mean, I got into tennis because I was working at the 2016 Olympics at NBC's headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. And John Wertheim, the great writer for SI, who does a lot of great work, we were just and a bunch of announcers having drinks and dinner. And it just must have come up in conversation, my tennis knowledge. And he's like, why don't you work in tennis? And I'm like, John, I've been trying to work at the Tennis Channel since I got to LA. And he's like, well, email this guy and tell him that I sent you. And then that guy took a meeting with me, and now I'm in the second year of a 4-year deal. And it's just because we were having dinner and drinks. You just never know when it's going to happen. Don't hang out in your room. Go connect with as many people as you can and just kind of put yourself out there.
I think right now, though, we should be hanging out in our rooms. I think that's
that's a fact. That's a good, excellent point. You could be a bubble boy and, you know, walk around in a bubble. Yes, this is, you know, I think that for guys like us, we know how much we love sports. I think that America's love for sports when we find our way on the other end of this thing is going to be bigger than it's ever been. Just to be able to be around each other and be in an event. And I don't know when that day is going to come when you can high five the stranger sitting next to you, or whether you guys are, you know, at shoot around that day, whether you can go out and shake hands with the coach when you're going to get your few nuggets. I don't know when that day is coming, but I do know that sports will play a huge part in healing this country after this is all over with. And I think it's going to be a slow return. It's not going to be like one day we're going to be putting 80,000 people at Sun Devil Stadium and you guys are going to be hosting a college football game. I don't think that's how it's going to go. I think the smaller the sport, the easier it will be to come back, right? So I think, is it Ice Cube? He has the 3-on-3 league. Like, they're going to take all the players and they're all going to stay in one house and then no one can leave. And then that way they'll know that everybody doesn't have COVID-19 and then they can play. So I think the smaller the sport, I think, and then once we get a vaccine, we're all in the clear. And so that's the thing I root for more than anything, is that once there's a vaccine, we can return to the way of life we all know. And fortunately, you guys are in school, you got some time. So I'm sure by the time graduation comes, things will be back to normal.
Yeah. And, so just to, wrap this thing up, going back to the day sports stopped with Rudy Gobert tested positive, and it basically felt like the coronavirus was spreading within the hour. What was your reaction to him? Where were you? And kind of reflecting on that day, because it's definitely a day that no one's ever going to forget, especially in sports.
Especially for guys like us or anyone who loves sports. To me, it will always be March 11th was the day, right? So even the East Coast NBA games had already played that day. So just know that's how quickly it happened, that the Sixers-Pistons game was done. And then later that night, we found out about Rudy Gobert and the sports world shut down. Now, I had mixed feelings only because, if you've got a wife and a kid, I was scared that I was going to be going to this USA climbing event with young athletes coming from all over the country who I don't know what they've been doing. I don't know these people. So I was a little nervous about going. When I was at NFL Network, I was a little nervous. We were doing social distancing already, but it was like, what are we doing here? Like, we're in the middle of the off season. Like, I just don't want to get sick. I don't want to, heaven forbid something really serious were to happen. I wouldn't be able to support my family. So my heart was broken for sports fans. And as a sports fan myself, my heart was broken, but there also was a lot of relief for me that until we really knew what we were dealing with, I didn't want to be exposed to it. So it was a very emotional day. And I felt like even for the days after, there was just like one hit after another of this sport shutting down, that sport shutting down. And, my heart was especially broken for all the seniors, whether you're a high school senior, a college senior, that you're not going to get those moments back. It's just not going to happen. And those are moments. It's not about the guy who hits the three to make the Sweet 16. It's about those moments when you're a part of a team that you'll never get those back. The excitement of landing in whatever city your first game in the tournament's in, or, fortunately for seniors in football, they got there last year. But, if you're a winter sport athlete or a spring sport athlete, never getting the closure of being like, I closed out my career the right way. It just bums you out. I do hope that the NCAA allows all the seniors to have one more year of eligibility. I think that it's hard to go that route because they don't know if there's going to be sports next season. Because then I don't think scholarship-wise you could have two classes all getting extra years, right? So it would mean the juniors and seniors would then both get them. And I just don't know how they would do it scholarship-wise. But, yeah, my heart breaks for, the people who don't get that, the shining moments at the end of a career and get that kind of closure with their teammates, with their coaches, with their schools. I mean, you guys are in school. Imagine some guy who's a year ahead of you on the ASU basketball team thinking we're going places, and then boom, it was just over. So it's been emotional. I think now my focus is more on when we do come back that we do it the right way. And so that we can all – I don't want to all come back and then all have to go back into our houses, right? So whenever we come back, I want it to be at the right time and when we know that we can make sure that everyone's safe.
Well, that's – yeah, absolutely. And, Ari, thanks so much for joining us. I know you're very busy. But
Not right now, though. You picked the right time to ask.
Yeah, I mean, going forward into the future, and this is the last question, with your career, what's next? Do you have anything left on your bucket list, like maybe calling the Super Bowl one day? Or
well, that would be a stretch unless I was the team's radio guy, because really the top guys at each of the networks, frankly, I don't think are going anywhere anytime soon. So in terms of the NFL, I have one goal left. So I've done preseason games for the Philadelphia Eagles, 5 years with the Vikings on NFL Network as a neutral party with Kurt Warner, and then now I'm the preseason guy for the Chiefs. I've been a regular season sideline reporter. I've never called a regular season NFL game in the booth, and that's still on my list of things to do. But, if that doesn't happen, it's been an incredible run, multiple Olympics, 10-plus years at the NFL Network. College basketball is still one of my all-time favorite things because of the intimacy of it. It's just 5-on-5 right in front of you. So one thing I'll keep you guys, I'll leave you with, that there are a million things I could tell you, but one of the greatest things about a career as a play-by-play announcer is you're getting paid to be there, and everybody else is not only paying for their ticket, they're paying for parking, they're paying for everything, and you're getting paid to be there, and you often have the best seat in the house. So it's the greatest gig ever. Don't ever stop pursuing the dream. Whatever you got to do on the side as a hustle to make it work, do it. But keep on chasing it, because I guarantee there'll be so much fun. It won't necessarily look that way in your bank account at the beginning, but it'll be well worth the journey.
Well, thank you so much. And, it's awesome to catch up with you. And, if the AFL comes back, I'm definitely going to have to be on a broadcast team with you in the future. I'm hoping
we'll make it happen. And really, it's Wills, Franklin, Caleb. Caleb's got my contact info. If at some point you've got to reel together, you can ask my wife. Like, anybody who asks for help, I will happily review your stuff and just give you very open, honest feedback on what I think is working, or maybe you want to work on something a little bit different. Because how you build that reel is really important. I think sometimes people just put a ton of stuff on a reel, and I always tell them, back it up. Give people like 3 minutes of your very best stuff, and then if they want more, they'll ask for more. as opposed to giving them everything at once. And they're like, oh, goodness, I'm not going to watch 90 minutes of Caleb's, college play-by-play. So whenever that time comes that you need some advice or you're deciding between two different paths, get my contact info from Caleb. And if I can help in any way, I'd be happy to do it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. Good to talk.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Good luck to you. Stay safe.
All right. Well, big thanks once again to Ari Wolfe for spending a lot of his time with us. But now we move into one more segment before we wrap it up for the night, and that is NBA Horse Tournament. It looks like there's going to be an official horse tournament. It's going to be broadcast on ESPN. NBA has already announced all the player lineups. Wills, Franklin, what are your biggest takeaways in the lineups, and what do you think is going to win it all? Simple.
Well, I heard a thing where like Trae Young had this thing where he didn't want Zach LaVine doing any like crazy dunks or anything like that or any crazy moves, because if dunks are allowed in this horse game, Zach LaVine's winning. I don't care what anybody says. Zach LaVine's taking it all. But if there's rules set in place, I have my money on Trae Young. I think he's just cold-blooded as they come, man. So that's my take.
Coming from this side, I seem to remember Trae Young doesn't really show up in big games, i.e. i.e. his team being one of the bottom 3 in the league right now.
It's not his fault.
I got my money on Paul Pierce, the truth. The truth.
Boy.
Brad
Paul Pierce.
Championship.
Paul Pierce.
Count his rings.
Yeah.
Right. Also,
He is clutch, though. He is clutch.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up since we're wrapping up the show, the NBA 2K tournament. I thought this was really funny. Devin Booker did not want to choose the Phoenix Suns. And
rightfully so. The Suns suck. Why would you want to be the Suns?
I'm not gonna lie. He has a vow.
The priceless statement on it is that he's saying 2K's got its stats wrong.
No. If you play with his player, like his player can't hit a 3.
Yeah, I agree.
He's a 3-point champion. He has the NBA 3-point record in the 3-point contest. And in 2K, his player can't hit an open 3. So he actually is right when he says that. I 100% agree with him. And
they did get – they got his releasing numbers wrong, bro. Like, the 2K really did him dirty. I'm not going to lie. I'm on his side.
That's a good excuse to not choose the Suns.
This is an Eric Bledsoe situation where he's tweeting, I don't want to be here. And he was trying to say he was at the hair salon with his wife. But getting traded by Phoenix like 3 days later.
Right. Well, that is going to do it for our show. It's been a great show, and we thank you for joining us. Our thanks once again to Ari Wolfe. You can see all the content he does on NFL Network and tennis channels, of course, and he'll be calling the Olympics 1 year from now. It was supposed to be this summer, but definitely go check him out. That's going to do it. We'll be back here with an all-new episode next week, and hope to see you soon. For Wills Rice and Franklin Miller, I'm Caleb Bouchy saying goodbye for now, and stay safe.
Peace.